Looking to keep up with recruiting trends and headlines? You're in the right place. Welcome to Career Crossroads, the premier talent acquisition community, with your host, Chris Hoyt and Jerry Crispin.
You know, you are Derek Zeller, and I'm Jerry Crispin, and I loved your article. So, you have this, extraordinary way of telling a story, and the story about the person you hired who was deaf, I think, was pretty cool. And I'm fascinated, though, that in the story, you found a really willing and ready hiring manager. Did that surprise you? I mean, in your story, you're talking about the fact that the hiring manager immediately saw the value of having a qualified individual who happened to be deaf, and all that entailed, and had no issues around it. But was that a surprise for you, or have you encountered other situations where you've talked about somebody with disability and the hiring manager needed a little more prodding?
I have had, that one was the most successful one. I did have a hiring manager. I didn't really want to write about it because I don't want to sit on subset, but I did have a hiring manager that just said, it's just not going to work out. And, I kind of I was in the, I wasn't in the space I was in now. I was in an agency. So, my salesperson, I wasn't really doing the sales. The salesperson was doing the sales. And it irritated me a great deal because, they're like, well, we'd have to buy equipment, and, there was all kinds of concerns. Well, how do we communicate with them? And, this was probably, 15, well, maybe even 18 years ago. We didn't really have the things that we have. I was pretty excited about that. So, and, you had to literally buy a phone system where you have it, and it was expensive. You have a translator, and they translate stuff, and they were just like, well, if we go to a meeting, we have to do this.
Go back and forth with a TTY device, so I get that. Yeah,
and, this was interesting because the client was a government client. They were really desperate. They needed someone on the team because they were falling behind their own deadlines. And, as you read in the story, this person was fantastic, and they loved her. And,
and it became a perfect storm for you because not only did you qualify the individual, find a hiring manager who was responsive, but you also were, a decade ahead of gender parity in making sure she got paid what the job was worth.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we set the bill rate, and we said this is what we're paying her, and this is what we're doing, and they were very excited. I mean, they were, the HR person, the manager, both were like, we were right when they told us we want to make the offer, we want to hire her. I got an email that literally the next day saying, they bought the best equipment that you could possibly buy. That they are already configuring her computer. I'm going to send it to her. They're already planning on meetings and so on and so forth. And, they've been IMing back and forth. And, he's just like, this is just, to them, it was like, this is the greatest, a great hire for them. And that was pretty cool.
I think that's fabulous. Yeah. So when you think about this, did you do anything in follow-up? I know this is a long time ago, but was there a period of time that you just, every once in a while checked in, make sure she was doing well?
Well, of course, I didn't, my boss did. I mean, she reported she worked for the agency, but she worked for our company. So we were in a constant contact with her, but I would talk to her about once a month because I always try to do that with, new hires for the first month or two to make sure they're settling in fine. If they have any issues that, they may not want to tell my boss or their boss, because, I'm a relationship builder, so they feel comfortable that they can tell me, I have an issue or I have a concern, so on and so forth, and I'm able to kind of champion that. But I do that for everybody, not just. I mean, that's normal for me.
Cool, and well, it should be normal for anyone, but it's the kind of competencies that you want to look for in a recruiter who's kind of working to master his or her craft. What about advice if we bring it forward to today? There's obviously a lot more tools to be able to, and forget the accommodation for the job itself. We know that there's that. It's the accommodation within the recruiting process. So are there flags or indicators that allow you to see if perhaps you've got somebody in the pool who might be disabled and, making more of an effort to ignore their disability and focus on what their ability might be?
No, see, the thing is for me, Jerry, I was brought up by the right people in this community. I could care less if you have a disability. I care less if you have green skin. If you can do the job, you're competent, and you're going to show up and accomplish it, and it fills my role, then I'm going to talk to you.
Right, but you have to stumble over that individual because they're not to be, filling up the pool, and you've got, 10, 15, 20 people in that pool. So unless they out themselves, you're not going to know that this might be a high quality candidate who happens also to be disabled.
Right. Well, I mean, in the case of somebody who's deaf, it's pretty easy because when you set up a phone call to chat with them about the role, and they tell you have to call this TDY thing, and you're going through an individual that's sitting there talking for the person who's deaf, and she was very open about it. I mean, she was born deaf, so to her it's like she already knew the prejudice, so she was like, here we go. And let's see how you react to it. I've been doing some general research on even people like are more autistic, proven to be like amazing programmers because they're so incredibly detail oriented.
Yep.
It's interesting. It's a very interesting thing. I think the biggest problem that society has is it's the same thing with mental illness for me. We don't want to talk about it. We're scared of it. Right. We think it's like it's back when AIDS was first out and you found out somebody had AIDS and you didn't want to, you thought they were going to, if they sweat on you, you were going to get AIDS. Right.
So unless it's obvious, most of us as recruiters who are just going through the pool, if you will, we're doing our sourcing, we're doing our work, we're getting people who appear to be qualified, we're doing the screening, if you will, to ensure that. But it's unlikely that unless it's really obvious, that we will recognize that individual has a meaningful disability from that perspective until the end. But what if you wanted to ensure that your pool, just like, today we make a little bit more of an effort to ensure that the slate that we're going to present to the candidate, to the hiring manager, if it's very high tech and there's very few women who might be at that level, we're happy to discover someone from a gender point of view who can do that job and spend a little time to make sure that if they are fully qualified, we can get them in the slate. We might do that as well on occasion for raise, for any number, for veteran status, for whatever. But it seems to me that the one area that we don't have any proactive value or activities is in looking at disability, perhaps with the exception of autism.
Yeah, I agree. I very much agree.
That's an area that might be a bit of a challenge, wouldn't you say?
It's a challenge because you have to look at what is the disability exactly. Is it, a blind person couldn't code, or can they? Yeah, they can. There's actually keyboards that were made with Braille. But so I think the problem is the general public. I made a joke once. I said it's not the people that you think have a disability. You're the one that has the disability because you're not actually giving the person a chance. You're labeling them. You're labeling them. Can a person in a wheelchair, drive a car? Will they be an Uber driver? More than likely not. But they can do office work. They can type on a keyboard. They can move around freely. It's not that kind of disability.
Well, I also blow up our assumptions. There is no reason why we should assume that the person cannot do X until it's up to them to deal with that from that perspective. But I'm kind of fascinated with this particular issue, and it seems to me that a lot of work needs to be done in this area. And one of the things that I think we could look to do, and I'm curious as to, I just want to test this idea out to you. We've spent a good deal of time when we started focusing in on veteran hiring, for example, in encouraging employers who have sufficient recruiters, let's say, that at least one of their recruiters be a veteran, because obviously they naturally would be more likely to champion some of those, understand the nuance of some of the issues that veterans face, and be better at perhaps helping their peers, recruiters who might not be veterans, understand what those issues are, and work with them to make sure that those don't get in the way of evaluating somebody fairly for a job. It seems to me that it'd be interesting if we made more of an effort in the country, especially with key progressive companies, to make a reach out to find folks who are disabled who might also be extraordinary recruiters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then they're going to be the one who, helps to champion, what can be done, and what assumptions we might want to blow up, as well as educating the hiring managers as well.
Yeah.
Just a thought. I mean, does that make sense? Obviously, there's a lot of companies that wouldn't fit, but there sure as heck are a lot of companies with enough resources that one resource would be someone who is disabled.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Anything else that you think might be important to say about your article?
Take it to heart, and maybe learn a lesson from it. Don't once as we said when you and I were talking earlier. You just don't judge a book by its cover. You got to read the story, man. And had I just said, "Oh, this person's deaf, forget about it," I would have lost out on an amazing hire and getting someone a good job at good pay. And she was able to prove herself, and she ended up going perm. She's a gov. At least last time I talked to her, which was years ago, she became a government employee. So, and there's stories of happy ending, but you have to look at people as people, and don't ever. It's not your job as a recruiter to make those decisions. That's to me, that's not my job. My job is to find the best qualified, talented people that I can for the position that it's at hand. And if I have to talk the manager into it sometimes, so be it. This one was a lucky one. I've had hit and misses. I've had I actually hired a transgender person who I had placed almost 2 years previous, and he was a CCIE, and those are not easy to find. But he decided he did a Caitlyn Jenner thing. He became a woman, and the manager was slightly uncomfortable because somebody in the company knew who he was when he was a male, not a female. And, they came to me with concerns, and I said, I don't understand the concerns. I said, other than that individual, who the hell cares? You need a CCIE. She needs a job. She's damn good and at a great price. So, why are we having this conversation?
Yeah, I know. I'll tell you, it would be great if we had more of these kinds of conversations for sure. But on that note, I don't want to keep and I don't want to drag this much longer, because I really think we got the essence of it. And I just want to thank you and appreciate the fact that you keep all of us thinking out there. So thanks again, Derek, for everything.
Thanks, Jerry. It's great talking to you, man. Have a good day.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Career Crossroads. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit careerxroads.com, facebook.com, and twitter.com/careerxroads. We'll catch you next time.